So we'll go ahead and get started. My name's Christine Leslie, and this is Amir who's already been speaking. We work with the parcel development team back at Esri Redlands. And today, this session is going to be talking about migrating and administrating parcels with the new Parcel Fabric that's just recently been released with ArcGIS Pro in the last month or two. So I think we have asked who's using Pro. Who's using the Parcel Fabric for ArcMap? Okay, good. Who has ArcGIS Enterprise installed? Good.
It's a lot.
Okay, Parcels. More than 1 million parcels.
Few.
Less than 1 million.
Most.
Less than 100,000. Okay, that's good. Easy. All right, so this session is we're going to talk about the Parcel Fabric in ArcGIS Pro, migrating your data. If you've never been in a Parcel Fabric before, how you can migrate pretty easily into the new Parcel Fabric. If you are in ArcMap with the Parcel Fabric for ArcMap, how you can quickly upgrade into the Parcel Fabric for Pro. In ArcGIS Pro, we now have a pretty extensive enterprise deployment and publishing with the Parcel Fabric, so we'll be talking about that. And then if there's time, some map configuration. So if you have never been in a Parcel Fabric and you were hesitant to go in the ArcMap Parcel Fabric because it was a bit of a data migration process to get into ArcMap, now in ArcGIS Pro, you're going to see it's a lot easier to go into the Parcel Fabric with just feature class or shape files and so on. So in ArcGIS Pro, we have a simple data model for our Parcel Fabric. It's records driven, meaning when I talk about a record, I mean the legal parcel record. Okay, so changes to the Parcel Fabric are triggered by the legal parcel record, so it's record driven. And because of that, all of our parcel features are associated to the parcel record. In ArcGIS Pro, we have built-in quality management into our Parcel Fabric through the use of topology. When you create a Parcel Fabric, it also automatically creates a topology. There are some built-in rules that are added to that topology for our Parcel Fabric, and that topology can be extended and configured for your organization, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So what is a Parcel Fabric in ArcGIS Pro? It is a controller data set. So when you create a fabric, it can create a controller data set that controls simple feature classes and a geodatabase topology. So it's just regular feature classes. There's nothing special about them. They haven't been enhanced, but they are controlled by this Parcel Fabric controller data set. Parcels are now stored and added to the Parcel Fabric as separate parcel types. Each time you create a parcel type, it creates a polygon and a line feature class. You can create as many parcel types as you need for your organization. So it's you that decide your parcel types and define your parcel types. And as you can see on the right there, we've got two parcel types, parcel type A and parcel type B. And so you can see every time we create a parcel type, the separate polygon and line feature class has been added. This will make map configuration and display and management of these parcel types much easier than it was in ArcMap, because they now have their separate schema for each parcel type. Record-driven workflows, the Parcel Fabric is edited in response to the legal record, so everything is tied to the record. You edit in and out of a record. If you're just doing data cleanup, then you're not doing record-driven workflows, which is fully supported. Parcels are associated to the record that created them and the record that retired them. So we now can see how we can track parcel lineage. The actual visualization of the lineage is not yet implemented yet, but the groundwork is there. We're now tracking the record that created the parcel and the record that retired the parcel as historic. Topology and rules, we've got built-in topology and error management, which we'll talk about. As I mentioned, we have feature classes that now get created. They're simple feature classes controlled by the Parcel Fabric dataset. We have a records feature class. In ArcMap, we had a plans table, for those of you in ArcMap. Now in Pro, we have a feature class, which means we have geometry. We actually have a record polygon that the Parcel Fabric maintains for you. So that record polygon will match the geometry of all the parcels that are associated to that record. If you go and delete a parcel, that record geometry will automatically be updated for you. So it's maintained for you, the record polygon. Parcel type feature classes, we just talked about those. Connection lines is a separate feature class, shows non-boundary lines in the Parcel Fabric. We have one feature class for points, shows points and control points. Errors, which are displayed in the map as error features, which can be interactively fixed. And when you want to add this Parcel Fabric to the map, you just have to drag the controller data set into the map, and it'll drag all the associated feature classes that are with it. So you don't want to be adding them separately. You want to make sure whenever you add a Parcel Fabric to the map, you add the controller data set, and then it'll add everything that needs to be added. So Parcel Fabric is a system of record. We want to try and represent the legal record as closely as possible. All of our parcel features are associated to the record. And we have this concept of an active record when you're editing parcels. And as you can see in the map there, in that little heads-up display box, we have an active record. And that active record can be turned on and off. When it's turned on, any new features that you create will be associated to that active record. You toggle it off. Now you're doing data cleanup or whatever you need to do, and you don't want stuff to be tracked by the record. Quality management. We have configurable quality management in the Parcel Fabric. Why is it configurable? Because what a good parcel is subject to your organization. We can't say this is what a good parcel is. You guys know what is a good parcel. And also, a good parcel is subject to what type it is. Some types are less restrictive. For example, you may have one parcel type where you allow overlaps, maybe easements, you allow overlaps. But then another parcel type, you don't want to allow overlaps, so you have more strict rules for that parcel type. So it's something that you configure as an organization. And to configure it, you use topology rules, you add your own geodatabase topology rules, must not overlap, and so on. And you can also use the new attribute rule engine in ArcGIS Pro to add attribute rules, which gives you even more control over the data in your Parcel Fabric. We also have a built-in parcel rule that we ourselves have added as well. These rules, you validate the topology, and any errors against these rules are topology errors, and they're displayed in the error features, and that those can go ahead and be interactively fixed. I also have, I haven't mentioned yet, but you can add subtypes to your parcel types. You just use the standard Geoprocessing add subtype tool. And you can even have different rules for those subtypes. So maybe you want to make your historic parcels subtypes, and they'll have different rules that govern their behavior. So for those of us in ArcMap, how is it different? In ArcMap, as you know, each parcel, all the parcels are stored in one feature class. We now have separate schema for parcel types will make your map, handling of your map and display so much easier. We had a plans table, but now we have a records feature class. We now have record geometry, the record footprint. In ArcMap, points, control points, and line points were each their separate feature class. We now have points and control points in one feature class. They are delineated by an attribute is fixed. If it's a fixed point, then it's fixed. If it's not a fixed point, it's a regular parcel corner point. Line points, there's no need for line points anymore because we now use topology and spatial coincidence in ArcGIS Pro to maintain connectivity between our features. In ArcMap, we had a check fabric command that just gave you a text file of topological errors. Well, now we can validate as we go, and we can get error features in the map that we can identify and fix. Invisible parcels or unjoined, unclosed construction, those are deprecated. So if once you do your upgrade, you may want to, if you have any unjoined parcels you want to keep, you may want to join them before you go ahead and do the upgrade. So improvements, we try and match the legal record more closely, and you'll see that with our new boundary management model later on. We try to stay closer to the legal record so data is more defendable. Simple feature classes. These are easily extended, and in addition, they can be edited via any editing tool in ArcGIS Pro. You are not constrained to a single toolbar like you were in ArcMap. You are now free to edit regularly with regular editing tools because it's simple feature classes. Parcel types have their own schema, no hidden tables, no hidden fields that you have to find out about. We use branch versioning only in a multi-user editing environment. Built-in quality management, and we can make use of the 3D capabilities in ArcGIS Pro. So with that, I'm going to transfer you to Amir, who's going to show some of these data model concepts.
Thanks, Christine. So here's a new project. There's no maps. The only thing I have here is a folder connection to this demo. And let's see how it works. Here's a sample data from Renton City, Washington State. This is a feature data set in a projected coordinate system. And here's the Parcel Fabric, a nice blue icon that sticks out in your catalog view. If I were to add, let's say, a polygon class to my new map, as you know, it might come with a random color, right? So here we add it to today I get a pink version. But let's remove that one. If we add a Parcel Fabric to the map, it will come with predefinitions of symbology, labeling, and so on. Of course, all the types have the same color. Let's turn off the encumbrances and the conveyance division to only stay with tags. And we are using now a file geodatabase, which is okay. And as we zoom in, we can see the data and the default labeling. So it comes with predefined logic, label classes for distance, for direction. Now, as you can see here, we have three parcel types. If we right-click on the Parcel Fabric, we can see the properties of it. It has a data source, of course, but if we look at the Parcel Fabric, it's version 1, the first release. It has been topology enabled. We'll talk about that. That means we can start editing it. We see the three parcel types that exist in this fabric. You can also discover this through the describe in Python if you wanted to. And you can also see the parcel rules applied to the different feature classes. Right now, this is a parcel rule. They must all have a record. If I wanted to discover the topology rules, I can just right-click and it's just the normal topology. The only difference is that it knows that it is being controlled by a Parcel Fabric, right? That means that if I try to delete it directly, it will say, no, you have to delete the Parcel Fabric first because that controls me. You can have a Parcel Fabric in a geographic coordinate system in the feature data set or a projected coordinate system. Most of you probably use projected coordinate system. And of course, you can then project it on the fly in the map if you're using geographic coordinate system for those of you that live in very high or low latitudes. I suppose there's no one from Antarctica here today. Other things to mention is I am now logged into my portal. So now I'm connected. On the right side here, we're connected to my file geodatabase. It can also be an enterprise, of course. But I can also connect to my portal, which I'm VPN now to Redlands. And we can see here the same city of Renton. There's two forms. One is the feature layer, and one is the image layer. The image layer is just rasters. If I double-click on the feature layer map, instead of adding the feature layer, I double-click that, and then I add the Parcel Fabric to a new map. If I try to edit it to the current map, it will not allow me. You can only have one Parcel Fabric in a map. So there's no more there's no reason for a map to contain two Parcel Fabrics. So we limit that to one. And you get the same experience. Of course, it's a bit slower now because we're pulling data from Redlands, but this one, if we look at the source of the data here, let's turn 2 layers off. And ArcGIS Pro is smart enough to cache. If we look at the source of any data here, instead of, so here's the points, source data, you see a URL. Some of you have been asking for years, can I have the one parcel type edited by one group and another parcel type edited by another group, right? So with Portal and Enterprise deployment, you get this flexibility, right? Of course, if it's a FileGDB, everybody can access it because it's a single user. Everybody has access to the file database. But with Enterprise, you can create one map that edit one parcel type, let's say tax parcels, and another group, let's say public works, that works on your subdivision easements and lots. With a new Enterprise, this is possible. So, and now it's basically, you can start editing. Of course, if you're working with Enterprise, you can start creating your own versions, and that's exactly identical to traditional versioning. You create a version, switch to it, reconcile and post. And on a file database, this guy, you can just start editing without creating any version. So that was a quick overview of the Parcel Fabric, and we'll switch back to Christina.
Okay, thanks, Amir. So we're going to just dive a little deeper into what a parcel is and how parcel is managed in ArcGIS Pro and the parcel boundaries. Just a quick recap, parcels are stored as different parcel types. You add it with a geoprocessing tool, and you'll see that when we do a migration. Separate polygon and line feature class for each type, and you can also go ahead and use the add subtype geoprocessing tool to add subtypes. We have an improved boundary model in ArcGIS Pro when you compare it to the ArcMap fabric. The ArcMap fabric had duplicated lines for matching adjacent boundaries, right? So there'd be duplicated lines there. In ArcGIS Pro, if the record does not show duplicated dimensions, then the fabric will not show duplicated dimensions. There is a single line for those adjacent parcels 7, 8, and 9, a single line between them. Overlapping lines are supported when they are needed. For example, when they're needed down there, when the lines aren't coincident, they go between different points. Obviously, we need overlapping lines there. And also, if the record happens to show 2 different dimensions for the same boundary, then yeah, we want to use overlapping lines to display that and manage those boundaries. So it's the concept, what we call it a shared boundary model. Lines are shared between parcels where appropriate, where the record says they are shared. So if we look at parcel 1 and parcel 2, we have one line that goes between parcel 1 and parcel 2. If the record, now we look at the line to the north between 1 and 2, and if the record shows a single dimension for that line going across both parcels, then so do we. It is a bounding line, right? So it's not split by 0.5. Let's have a look at another example. How are the boundaries, these shared boundaries, how does it work with the legal parcel record? Well, we can arrive at a situation where the parcel will have lines that are tied to different parcel records. Why would this happen? Well, if you get a new record, for example, a merge, and it doesn't change any of the line dimensions or geometry, then those lines are going to remain associated to their original record. If this new record that you get changes geometry, changes lines, then those lines will be added and associated to that new record. So basically, lines stay associated to the record that created them until they get redefined by a new record. And Amir will demo this when he does a quick merge, just to show you how that works. So in this particular case, record B created 3 new lines, identified 3 new lines, and just reused that top line going between 1 and 2, so that top line is still associated to record A. Shared with overlapping has more examples. The right-of-way polygon has a single line, and then we also have lines for the lots. And then we have our backlot lines, which are overlapping. Points are shared. This has not changed from ArcMap Parcel Fabric. Connection lines are in a separate feature class used to show non-boundary lines like right-of-way center lines, connections to control, and so on. Topology and error features. Just a quick to show you how topology will work. In the graphic on the right, I've added some parcel traverse lines, and if I validate as I go, the validate will say these lines do not have a parcel. So that's some of our built-in quality management. You can build in additional rules. We also have a dangle that shows there may be some data entry error. All right, so Mia is going to show us what a parcel is in Parcel Fabric.
Here we have 2 parcels. When you have a Parcel Fabric in your map, you have the Records Parcel tab. I'll do a quick merge just to show the concept. Let's just call this record 1, 2, 3. And we can define the types of the record type it is, and we'll show later how we can where this domain can be found. So this is the record type, will be a merge. I'm going to skip all the extended attributes. You can extend the attributes on the record feature class as you see fit. We have here 2 parcels. Let's look at one of them quickly, the attributes. We can see it has been created by this record. We can also navigate the relationship and see it's called record 18230. So there's a record there. The record feature class is under the Parcel Fabric layer. It's this blue footprints that we see here. So you can see there's a bunch of legal records have been recorded here, but we're going to just do a quick merge for those two parcels, and it's as easy as selecting the two and merging them. And we are going to give the new parcel just a new name here, 999, just merge it. So because we have an active record and those are parcels, we get the correct result we are interested in. The units of the target is defined in the project units. And now, another thing that we see is that record 123 footprint has been updated automatically, right? Art123, the type is a merge. That footprint is getting updated automatically as you do transactions. If we look at the data here, this parcel is defined now by boundary lines that have not been updated. They are still probably pointing to the old information model. So let's select the new parcel and the lines. What makes the new parcel current, so if we look first on the parcel 999, it has been created by a record, but it's not been retired yet. If we look on the tax lines here, they are still tied to the original record, 18230. If we turn the historic parcels on, we should, on the right layer of course, we will see that there are historic parcels here, and these historic parcels are retired. Those are not the same. It's been created by record 18230, I think, and it's been retired by the active record now. This is how we can create partial lineage from that. The last thing is, for those that are used to line points and are wondering where those went, let's turn the historic off. We can turn the records off, so just for a second here. Here we have a point. We can select it and we can move it. Let's take this point, which looks a bit like a line point, but it doesn't really matter. We can right click and just say move. And you'll see that the rubber banding effect here, and this rubber banding is based on spatial relationships. So right now everything moved together. We can also move the polygon. As long as the data integrity is maintained, you'll see the rubber bending, and this is how we govern the movement. And if we move the parcel, everything would move with it. Other parcel types that are part of the Parcel Fabric will also move together and coincide. So you can see the roads, which are those guys, also move together with this movement. They don't have to be in your map in order to move. Things are still glued together. And what takes care of this is the topology, and we call this, if we look in the editing tab, this is the Parcel Fabric topology that governs that movement. We use the default, which is the default cluster tolerance, which is something you don't want to touch. Okay, it's 0.1 millimeter. None of you here probably have data that is more accurate than that, so just let it be. If you make it too small, you'll get performance issues. Too big, you'll corrupt your data. With that, I'll pass it back to Christine.
All right, so how do we migrate into the fabric? This is when you are not in a Parcel Fabric for ArcMap and you have feature classes and you want to come into Pro. Well, in ArcMap, we required you to do extensive data cleanup. We needed a very clean topology, no errors, to load into the Parcel Fabric, and that did make a lot of people very hesitant and delayed to migrate into the Parcel Fabric for ArcMap. But in ArcGIS Pro, you can straight up append right now and then fix later. So the idea is migrate today, use the append tool, get your data in, and then fix as you go. So Amir is going to go through those steps.
Thank you, Christine. So here we have a polygon feature class. It's coming from HCAT, Harris County Appraisal District in Texas. And it has that special reference that could be even a shapefile. I'm a catalog pane kind of a guy, but those that are used to our catalog, you can go also and view it in catalog view. But we'll do everything today with a pane. So we want to migrate to a new feature data set. So that's right-clicking on the file geodatabase, new feature data set. And we are going to use the right special reference for that. I'm going to just call it FDS now for feature data set and use one of my favorites today. That is the Texas South Central State Plan Coordinate System. And we're going to create a new feature data set. So that has been created. Second thing we want to do is create a Parcel Fabric. Where do we find that? So in the toolboxes, there's Parcel Tools now in 2.4. and we'll be working mostly with administration today. So that's things to do with the schema changes, and we're going to create a new Parcel Fabric. The inputs are the feature data set, and then we need to give it a name. I'm just going to call the Parcel Fabric, and press run. That's going to create the nice blue icon. It's also going to add a few domains, default domains that we put in the database, and also the other controlled feature classes. So we have now connection lines, points, records, the topology, which has no feature classes yet, and relationship. There's been warnings here, and this is because I'm doing it again in the same location, and those domains already exist in the database. If you already have the domains preset before and you modified them, we will not change them. We will respect your values. Okay? So this is why the warning is here. If you don't have them, we'll lay down the new default ones. Now we want to add parcel types. I can add one, I can add many parcel types, and we can do it either by going to add parcel type from here or just right-clicking on the Parcel Fabric and say add a new parcel type. We'll give it a meaningful name. Those are tax parcels. So I'm just going to call them tax, and we press run. That's going to add a polygon class and a line feature class, and also, of course, the relationships to the record feature class. And now we can see tax and tax lines, and the relationship class of those two guys to the record feature class. Everything is tied to the legal record. Of course, the records are not the real legal record, but they reference the legal record. They can also have a URL, if you wanted, to your document management system, to the real scanned document. Let's talk a bit about extending it. So let's look at the source data. I can right-click and see design fields and see all the fields I have in my source data. And there's fields here that Harris Appraisal District. Their own fields they extended it to. And I don't have them yet on the tax parcel, so I'm going to do the same design and say design fields. And nice thing with Pro, I can put them side by side. And I can just select the fields I'm interested in. So I'm just going to select all of those. And I'm also going to select this field. I'm just going to use the Shift key and the Control. Right-click and say copy. Right-click on my target new line feature class and say paste. And here's a field I don't want, so I'm just going to delete that. And this is how it is. It is in ArcGIS Pro to copy, paste the schema. Okay, so that was pretty neat, I think. And thank you. It's not us, but we'll take the credit. Another field that I've added here is a record name. That is usually something that associates the parcel to the legal record. That could be, you can join to your business system, to CAMA or land registry, and populate that name. And we'll use this field soon to create those record footprints, okay? For those of you coming from ArcMap, most of you will see soon that we'll take care of you in a better way. But this is how you would bring a new data into a new Parcel Fabric. So now that we extended the schema, we can also extend the records feature class schema. So I'm just going to hook up the records feature class to a new domain. So again, design fields, and the record type has no domain. I'm going to hook it up to a domain that already exists, that I created, not the system, called record type, and that's specified: merge, split, subdivision, whatever you want to put there, it's up to you. And we save the schema, and now when you create a new record, you'll get this drop down where you can choose the record type. Now, we created a brand new schema, and in order to migrate, all you need to do is to basically append the data now. It's easy as appending data. So append everything in Pro, of course, you can search. That's really nice for the append tool. And I can say the source data is here. So copy paste. Of course, they need to match in the special reference. My target data is the tax polygon class. And like I think Jason showed on the big stage, you can use the mapping of the fields if some of those don't match. The one in red are the one that don't have any source data, and the one that are in black already found a matching, and those are the one we copy pasted. And all you need to append is just I only need to migrate just to append it. And of course, I'm using a sample data here, right? You probably want to start with a little sample data so you have the process nailed down. And also use a file geodatabase that lets you edit it after you appended it in. So everything append will work really fast now because we don't really track what you're doing in the fabric. And that is because the topology has not been enabled. Once the topology is enabled, we are actually going to start tracking what you do in the fabric. The controller is going to come back to, you're going to come to life basically. So to enable, now that we appended the data, after appending you can enable the topology that will associate the partial type feature classes with the topology, add the rules, and now we are actually starting to track everything you do. So you want to enable topology after you load the data. Now, the last thing we want to do, let's see how it looks first. Let's add it to a new map. So we expect to see basically only polygons, no connection lines, no lines, no records, right? If we turn the record feature class, we'll see no records. So how do we get there? Let's create records now. So again, in that administration toolbox, we have create parcel records. You can run this tool anytime. So even if you're already in production working, you can run that. The input is my tax layers that has that record name field. Let's look for the record name. Here it is on the bottom. And press run. And now that it has been created, let's refresh the map a bit, zoom out, and we can see the blue outline of the records, right? They have a name, they have a label, and you can see they came in. So now we have the records created. You can always join to your camera system, calculate the record name afterwards, and run this tool as well. And now that we have the records, we are still missing lines and points. For that, we need another tool called build, and we're just going to build a parcel fabric. So build basically brings whatever is missing. I'm going to run it on the entire extent because it's a small sample data set. And now we have points and lines as well. And Jason showed that in the demo. He also updated the code of a few lines. And in this case, you'll see here, for example, an overlapping boundary, right? There's one boundary for this, one boundary line here, and there's two boundaries for the other parcel. That's the kind of the backload issue. So we do support that as well. We don't planarize the entire data. And that was the entire data migration in ArcGIS Pro.
All right, so let's summarize, go through some of those steps. And you'll notice that everything he did was a geoprocessing tool that can be put in a model that can be run overnight if you have a lot of data. So create a feature data set. Your fabric will be created in a new feature data set. Only one fabric can be created in a single feature data set. Create a parcel fabric, that is a geoprocessing tool. Use another geoprocessing tool to add your parcel types. You will run it for each parcel type you want to add. Now you go ahead and extend your parcel fabric that you've just created. You add your additional fields, subtypes. You maybe go and create that record type domain for your record types that you'll be working with. Then once you've extended your data model, then you're going to go and run the standard append tool to append your data. Most likely you're going to just be appending polygons because that's what most people want to append. If you don't have reliable lines, just append polygons and let the build tool build lines for you. However, if you do have lines that have got good COGO dimensions that you do want to append, you can go ahead and do that.
You should.
You should do that because you want to bring in any good dimension data that you have been working with. So there is a workflow in the doc that'll take you through appending lines if you do need to append lines. You can use field mapping in that geodatabase append tool. As you saw, it's pretty easy. You just map to the fields in the information model you've just configured. Now, after loading, now this is when you go ahead and enable the topology. You don't want to enable the topology before you load or before you've added parcel types because now it'll take forever to do an append if you've gone and enabled parcel topology because now it's got to track everything.
Not forever.
It will take a long time, especially if you have a large data set. Create parcel records. So if you have a record name field and you can populate that record name field with a name that corresponds to each parcel that it can be associated to, you can run the create parcel records tool. So if you can tie a record name to each polygon that that record manages or is associated to, you can run the Create Parcel Records geoprocessing tool to create and generate record geometry. Once you've done that, then you go ahead and build parcels. Build will create any missing parcel features such as points, lines, and polygons. So if you bring in some lines, but in other areas you don't have lines, build will leave your lines that you have brought in and will create lines that are missing for other areas. So it will not overwrite anything. It only creates missing data. All right, so let's have a look at upgrade. Now we're looking at those of you who have a Parcel Fabric in ArcMap, and now we want to move to this new data model. Well, we have a simple upgrade tool that you will run on this Parcel Fabric. It's a geoprocessing tool, and Amir's going to show it to you. You don't have to fill out 15 different fields. It's just an upgrade that works in the background.
I saw some smiles in the crowd when we showed the data migration, how complicated it was. It was pretty easy, right, compared to ArcMap. But we always promise that when we go and release this software in Pro, we'll make the upgrade process really easy. And we put effort in that. And here we have the same data set, but now we see the Parcel Fabric for ArcMap. So we renamed the old one to Parcel Fabric for ArcMap. So you know you can only edit that in ArcMap, and the metadata on the tooltip says that you cannot edit it, of course, in Pro, and it looks like the ArcMap Parcel Fabric. So in order to make that a Parcel Fabric in Pro, all you need to do is create a feature data set with the same spatial reference and run the upgrade tool. The upgrade tool takes as input the ArcMap Parcel Fabric, the Parcel Fabric for ArcMap. And you only have to do it once. And target feature data set, we'll drag it in, we'll give it a name, let's call it, again, Parcel Fabric. And we can now just run it. It will scan your Parcel Fabric for ArcMap, find all the parcel types. For each parcel type, it will add a parcel type in your target schema. It will also take all your extended attributes on your parcel lines and so on, your plans, and create it in the appropriate feature class. And it will also bring your domains. Soon, Christine will show you what it's not going to bring. This is going to take about 2 minutes, 3 minutes to run, so I just want to show another cool feature. All those things we did in this process now are documented in the history. In order to make a model out of that, so I can run it again on the entire data set, all you need to do is add it to a model, and it will bring all those tools together in a model that you can reuse on your entire data, right? So this is how easy it is. You just then expose your parameters, inputs, rerun that again, go home, come back the next day, it's done. So while it's running, we're going to switch back to Christine to tell you what's coming and what's going to be left behind in ArcMap.
Okay, so one thing we haven't said is when you do this data migration or this upgrade, do it to a staging file geodatabase first. Do not attempt to data migrate into SDE geodatabase or upgrade to SDE geodatabase. Do it to a file geodatabase first, stage it, do any calculations, do any post-processing, then you will copy that feature data set to your SDE geodatabase. That is what we recommend.
And the reason is,
do it to file.
And the reason is that if you put it in an enterprise geodatabase, we restrict you from editing it. Mm-hmm. So editing is only allowed through first publishing it to make it service-based, which we will show soon. So you want to do it in a file. How many parcels can fit in a file GDB? Well, I loaded 10 million parcels, the entire Netherlands, to a file GDB, ran calc on that, it works. So I think everybody in this room have less than 10 million, so you should be good.
Okay, so SDE geodatabase, once the fabric is in an SDE geodatabase, it is only edited via a feature service. This is why we tell you to do your staging on file, so that you can do any big post-processing that you need to do. Upgrade, it'll transfer all your attributes. It's not going to leave any of your attributes behind. It'll use the type field in ArcMap to determine your parcel types. Plans, it was a table, it now becomes a record feature class. Connection lines are extracted and put in the separate connection lines feature class. Points and control points are transferred to a single points feature class and are identified by that attribute field called isFixed. We do bring across your original parcel IDs, complete description in the help What is not brought across, this is probably more important, any hidden system tables like the jobs table, the
adjustment level
level, that data that is not used in Pro, that is not brought across. Invisible parcels are not brought across. So if you have unjoined parcels, before you upgrade, you want to rejoin them to your parcel fabric. System-generated lines like radial lines and part connectors, those are for multi-part parcels. You do not, those will not be brought across, as well as system-generated points like center points and redundant points that are on top of control points. And once again, we don't use line points anymore, so those won't be brought across. There was one thing I wanted to mention. Oh, upgrade does not change your original fabric. All it does is transfer the data to a new parcel fabric. So you will still have your original parcel fabric in ArcMap, can still be in production. So if you are curious and just want to do an upgrade and see how everything is working, that's not stopping you from continuing to do your work in ArcMap, because it does not change the original parcel fabric. So I think that is an important thing. You're not finished and done once you upgrade.
But don't upgrade your annotation if you have those, because those are upgraded in place. Okay, make a copy of annotations if you want to bring annotation forward. That's maybe a side note.
Right, so upgrade doesn't enable the parcel does enable the parcel topology, so you don't have to do that again. It doesn't enhance the data for ArcGIS Pro, it just brings it across as is. As Amir said, annotation is not upgraded. That is a separate migration process to Pro, and it's discussed in the migration topic, the general migration topic to Pro in the help. Related tables, any related tables that you have added will not be brought across. It's another upgrade process. Does not extend and apply a solution. Those will be coming. So those of you in the local government information model, where is it in Pro? Well, it's not ready yet. That has been worked on by the solutions team, and that will be coming.
It's most likely going to be just a map that looks better, right?
Okay,
I mean, you can wait for it, or you can just start working. It's up to you.
Right, so you want to show some post-processing options?
Sure, so the upgrade has been completed. Let's see how the data looks like. We're going to go back to the project and expand the target, and here we have the new upgraded Parcel Fabric. We can now edit to a new map to have a look. It's adding the parcel type, and here they are. If we zoom in, we'll see there's points already, there's lines, there's cargo dimensions. This time they came from ArcMap, but we can see there's duplicate lines between them. Well, with the new information model, I don't really need to have this redundant data between the parcel lines, so we can use this tool called delete identical to get rid of some of those duplicated lines. So I can put the input data set will be my text lines, and I'm only going to use the shape field. If I had really good distances, meaning they were not inversed, then I could also add another field called distance. But since all my data in ArcMap was inversed, the majority, if I don't want to use it because they might have a different value on the 13th digit, and then they will not get removed. So I'm just going to use the shape field here and run it on this data. And here we go. Now there's only one boundary between those lines. In cases where there was a backlot issue, overlapping lines with backlot, of course, they will still be there. We didn't lose any information. So that was delete identical. Now, since in ArcMap we had in the LGM, the local government information model, there were 56 extended fields for different parcel types. You might also want to go and design your fields. So right-click on maybe the text lines, design field, and get rid of the fields that are not relevant for tax parcels, right? We take all the extended attributes with us. So if you have conveyance designator and conveyance type and fields that are irrelevant, you can just go ahead and delete those and save the schema and only leave the fields that are relevant for the tax parcels. One important field that we do add here is the original feature ID. Okay, so if you forget something or you want to rejoin it, it's there. It's there for parcels, it's there for lines. So if you have a notation, for example, you can re-establish the relationship class to the feature linked annotation, and with the original feature OID. And in ArcGIS Pro, everything is based on global IDs. Okay, of course, the object ID is always there for from the DBMS, but we use global IDs on everything, so you can take the data disconnected and so forth. So there's another geoprocessing tool you can use to upgrade the relationship from an object ID based to global ID based, and then you're basically good. So this is how you can bring related data. I'm just discard those schema changes. And other things that we found for 2.4, we also created automatically the record footprint. So you can see all the records were already created. But for those of you that used a plan called map, you might have a lot of data associated to that map plan. And if you're talking about now very big data, that map plan will assume a geometry that's very, very large. And because every time we do a transaction, we update the record geometry, the footprint of the transaction, if it's also to map, it's going to be a very heavy lifting. So you can just go ahead and delete those large records, just go to the attribute table and delete them so they don't cause this problem. We are going to release a patch soon, 2.4.1. We're already working actually on 2.5, right? So that takes care of that problem so we don't bring those very large geometries. Or just delete the large record feature class. So that was how you upgrade from ArcMap. Easy, right? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Amir. So just a few notes on this post-processing. Run the delete identical tool to remove overlaps. This is optional for you. Run it and see if it works for you. We recommend the shape field as the input field. So if it finds matching coincident shapes, it's going to delete one of them. So it's something you can fiddle around with, something you can try and see if it removes a lot of your duplicate lines. Now, if you're going to deploy to an enterprise environment, if we're going to publish, which is the next thing we're going to do not bother with your map symbology, because when you publish, that map symbology is not brought over. But if you are going to continue in a single user environment on a file geodatabase, you can start working with your map symbology in the map. Once again, do all your staging on a file geodatabase, perform large field calculations. If in the ArcMap Parcel Fabric you just used one single plan for all your parcels called the map plan, that's going to cause performance issues if you try and bring over that huge record into ArcGIS Pro, because it's now no longer just an entry in a table. All right, so Mira has demonstrated that. So I've talked about deployments. You've got a single user. Enterprise, you need to publish to a feature service to edit in a multi-user environment. So Amir's going to show how we publish.
Thank you. So to connect to an enterprise database, you just add a database connection. I'll do it a bit quickly now, so we have enough time. I'm going to connect to a Postgres instance, actually on my machine now. So Carmel, and let's see that it exists there. Yes, it does. And say OK. So now we have a connection. What you want to do is update that connection to be branch versioned. So I'm going to go to the database connections and make it a branch connection. So that's the new branch versioning. So now it's updating the connection properties to be branch. This Postgres instance is completely empty. Here we have the target feature dataset we just updated. I'm going to just copy the entire feature dataset into that new instance. So I'm going to paste it in. So now it's pasting the entire data, the fabric, and so on. It's already branch version. Of course, what I forgot last time is to register that as versioned, which I'll do now. And then we're going to publish it to my enterprise, which I'm logged onto, which sits in Redlands. So that's going to take a few more seconds. And now it's in my enterprise. Let's register that as versioned. So let's do a quick refresh here. Manage. Register as version. Now, if it's popping up any message here to move edits to base, that means you're on the wrong versioning type. If it's branch versioning, it's just going to do it in place. Branch versioning doesn't need compress and analyze. It does everything by itself. It has full history. You can move back to any moment in time. And it has many other benefits. So that's the new type of versioning, and that's the only type of versioning we support. From a user experience, it's the same user experience. To publish it, we just edit the fabric again to a new map. So let's edit to a new map. And now we are connected still to the data in client server, right? We're not connected through services. And here's the data. How the data looks doesn't really matter. So don't change symbology, that really doesn't matter. Now we have to publish it, so you have to be logged in as someone to the portal that has permissions to publish. In order to publish, we go share and go to the web layer. You have to do it in the right order. We already also have a task that guides you through doing it in the right order. So we'll call it demo 2 now.
And what everything Amir's doing here is fully documented as a publishing workflow. It's an actual workflow in the doc. If
I wanted it to be a read-only, I would not check this feature capability maybe, but I do want it to be a map that my editors can handle. So I'm going to check the feature, and then I'm going to go to the configuration tab. And if I did things in the right order, I should see version management here, which I want to check. And then I can basically be good and analyze. We made it such that it's coming with good defaults, okay? So by default, for example, we only allow updates of true curves. Why? Because we don't want other clients to corrupt your curves, right? So it comes with great defaults. Now we can go and analyze that we are good, and you can see that the source data is not registered with my server yet. How do you register it with my server? You just register it this way. And we're going to call this machine is called Carmel. So this is something you do only once. It's basically letting the portal know where the data sits. And that way it will not copy the data over, it will just reference it. So now this is one way to register a data store with your server. Of course, there's the data store button here that can show you all the data stores in your portal. So we are VPNing now to Redlands, so it's a bit longer than usual. Now that we've done it, we can analyze again, and we should not see this error anymore. And we can go ahead and just press the publish button, which is now sending all the needed information to the portal, creating an item on portal, and making it available for editing. Why don't I care? So for publishing, you'll see now that I don't have historic parcels, for example. This is a difference. Published data cannot have definition queries. It needs to be identical to actually what you would see in the catalog. So you can think about the Parcel Fabric layer that is now going to be created on the server, on the portal, the same as you would treat the Parcel Fabric data item in catalog. There will be a future there where you can create this maybe on ArcGIS Online, right? And then you actually never know, you never see the Parcel Fabric icon. You just get back a Parcel Fabric layer, the same as you would get a hosted feature service layer from ArcGIS Online. And you never know how it's being stored up there. So it's updating the service definition on the portal. It's almost done, almost done. Come. Of course, it would take the same time if I had 1 million parcels or 20 parcels, right? It's just creating those items on the portal, knowing where the server is. You could have more than one server, right? Federated servers. They all need to know about this new item. They also need to set the right permissions. Who can set that? Which is another thing, by the way, that you can do when you publish. You can set which groups have access to that, right? You can create those groups, public works assessor and so on. And maybe we'll switch back to you and then show that.
Yeah.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to save time.
Towards the end now, we just wanted to point out that Parcel Fabric in Pro does ship with built-in tasks. So you can go load those tasks from the resources folder. It does tell you where to find them. And these tasks will guide you through some of these administration workflows. In addition, all these workflows are documented in the help. So it's not just a task, but we do have them documented as well. Here's a screenshot of the task. Amir would show it once the data is published. It looks like it's still publishing away. Map configuration, once you've published as a feature service, now you can drag in your layer from your portal. Now you will see your historic parcels. You won't see them in client server, but you will see them once you bring them in from the portal, and now you can go ahead and configure symbology, scale, and so on. So if you're doing single user in file, you don't have to worry about any of this. You're good to go once you've migrated. But if you're doing a deployment in an enterprise system, you need to publish as a feature service, get that feature service from portal, bring it down, set up your layer configuration, and then when you start editing, you need to create and switch to a version, just like you would with standard branch versioning. It's taking an extra long time today.
Last time I put the data directly on the server in Redlands and published from the same network. And now I'm doing it a bit. So
open
this
it
way
up
it
for
takes longer.
questions while we wait?
I can show how it would look like and talk about those points from the one we published last time.
Okay.
That would just be good, just as good. So let's show you how that would look. So while it's publishing, I'm just going to dock it on the side. If I log to the portal and go to my items, so let's go one backwards, you can see this is the one we loaded last time. It's the same data. It's just the data is sitting on another machine in Redlands, the same machine actually. So we use enterprise deployment to publish everything. You want to double click the feature layer, and here you would have the Parcel Fabric, and I'll add it to a new map. Now once it's published, I already deleted the data source. So let's add this guy. So it's a different data set just to make that point. We'll add it to a new map because they have different special references, and the special reference of the map gets set when the data is being added. So here it goes. What did I add? We have entire Houston here. Probably. Now it's coming in. And I'm using just a standard machine in Redlands, so it's not a real server, it's just my desktop there. Let's turn off some of the layers. Yeah, the server is getting warmed up probably. And it's probably busy with the other activities. What about versioning? Somebody asked last time, you can just use the standard versioning. Once you select the version, you'll see the versioning come to life, and you can create your new version and switch to it, so exactly the same user experience as with traditional. On the map side, here it comes. So if you only wanted to see, you would probably want to control the scale dependencies to make it more efficient so you don't draw too much things in the wrong scale. If you wanted to, for example, only see distances, you can go to the label expression, and there's already a different class to only show the distance. If you wanted to show both and change the units, you can go into the label expression as an administrator and go to select the layer, of course, the class, labeling, and this is using the new arcade expression language, and we put a setting here. So quadrant bearing, you just these two files, you can change all the colors and all the parameters that we expose, even the colors, in the settings area. If you really want to dig in, you can go into the logic that is here, but you don't have to. And the important things you want to do is go to your project. So if you're setting this map or this project to be the editing map, you want to go to the option, units, and set the right distance units, area units, location units, direction units that your users need. Based on the area units, for example, merge knows to merge into the target in acres or square feet or square meters. So you want to have those right. Also, when people enter Kogo dimensions, you don't want the map to be in square feet. When the enter data is in US square feet, it will seem like it's not rounding up properly and so on. You can configure the map to have the right locators, for example, which is really easy to do. If you go to the setting, you can add a layer, and you can specify a search by parcel name, for example. And the last thing you can do, once you're good at it, you can view the tasks that are in this project. This is the administration tasks, and you can use it to load the data. Everything we did here is part of the tasks, and you can also configure your map with the editing task for the users. So these are the type of things you want to configure. Of course, you can learn much more about how to work with ArcGIS Enterprise in enterprise sessions, create those groups, roles, permissions, and so forth to give you this fine-grained control about who does what in the organization.
All right, so I think that pretty much wraps it up. 3 minutes for questions if anyone wants.
Questions, 3 minutes, if anyone has a question.
Yes.
So we haven't migrated from the current old system using Sidwell to ArcMap yet. So in your opinion, knowing what the road ahead is for your tool, would you migrate to ArcMap first and then Pro, or would you just wait and migrate to Pro whenever it is ready?
The question is, would you migrate now to ArcMap or to Pro, basically? Do you want it to take 2 years or 2 minutes?
If possible, I would go to Pro. I would avoid, if at all possible.
Yeah, and then not to talk about, I mean, it's not about all data migration, it's also the training.
Yeah.
There's other aspects that involve with migrating. It's not just the data.
So yeah, if at all possible, I would do a Pro migration instead of an ArcMap, which is a much longer process. And then you'll have to relearn 2 different sets of Parcel Fabric. I would try, if you can, go to the Pro. Yes?
So would you recommend that we wait until ArcGIS 2.5 to convert our Parcel Fabric and ArcMap?
No. You should do it right now. It's the Parcel Fabric in 2.4.
Today or tomorrow?
Is good to go. It was released a month ago. It's good to go. You can do it right now.
Of course, if you use list square adjustment, then you have to wait till list square adjustment is supported.
Yeah,
but if you don't list square adjustment, it's good.
If you're interested in adjusting to control networks, that's functionality is not available.
We actually waited another release because we were not happy with what we had based on holistic testing with real users, real data. And so we waited from 2.3 to 2.4 to make sure it's ready.
Yes. That's if you're in ArcMap, some of those huge record parcels might be there if you maintain them. If you maintained huge record parcels, then you'll have to.
They're probably not true records. They're probably things like the map plan.
If you maintain them. Yeah.
After you migrate, you delete identical maybe, and you delete a few large records that are not really records, and you will not have this performance hit. That's it. 2.5 will be hopefully under your Christmas tree, somewhere around December, January.
Yes.
Are the parcel types within the fabric like mutually exclusive, like either it's taxed or it's tax exempt, or could they?
It's totally up to your organization how you want to do that.
So my parcel, I could have subsets within.
You can have a subtype, you can have a tax parcel and then subtypes of that tax parcel, or you can just have different parcel types. It's totally up to you how you want to do it.
One parcel could have several different.
Yes.
Yes, and the thing, you only want to create subtypes if you want to apply different rules, different behaviors to the different subtypes.
If they behave differently from each other, then yeah.
So like your parcel type for encumbrance, that's just a parcel type?
Yes.
Or was it a subtype?
It's up to, I would put it as a separate parcel type, but if...
By default, it was in the local government a type, and it moves as a type.
Yeah.
And if you want to have encumbrance type in there...
I noticed you had subtypes in encumbrance, right?
No,
if you
was...
have encumbered subtypes, we had a lot in there.
We don't create the subtypes by default. Only if they have different rules you want to create subtypes. Otherwise, don't create subtypes. Just have it. I mean, a type, you can have a field that controls the symbology and the editing templates, right? You don't create a subtype because you want to have different editing templates or different symbology. You just use a field to symbolize them by unique values, and that's good enough.
Yes.
You might not be able to answer this, but I haven't seen anything this conference yet on the branch versioning.
Oh.
If we use this, do we get an entry in our versions table in the database, or is that stored off somewhere else? Because like when we create a version now, something goes into the versions table. We manage that pretty tightly through a nightly process. So I need to know if there's going to be an extra version now because we've...
The branch versioning schema is fully documented in the help documentation. You're also welcome to come to the Geodatabase Island and talk with a specialist there about how it's being done, but it's faster because it's using an insert-only model to the database. It also, when you delete a feature, it says this user deleted that in that timestamp, so this is why it's so faster.
And I'm cool with all that. I just want to know where the information about the version is being stored. So
I would come down to the island and ask the Geodatabase Island guys that
it is in the DBMS, and you can access it, and you can ask those guys.
Yeah. But somebody else came down to the island and they were wondering why there was no session on actual versioning. They were like, why is there? And so they were discussing having that in future.
And put this in the feedback.
Yeah.
And there's no more A and D tables. There's no more this.
I would make
big
sure you let them
stage
know
tree
why
table.
is there no session on specifically branch version? Because somebody else was asking that. Yeah, and I think they need to know about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a question on the plan name. I believe the new model doesn't support that, the plan.
That's the record.
What you used to calling plan is now called record. That's it. And you can have a name to the record, like you have a name to the plan. Yeah, we just in Pro we make sure that it's unique. You cannot have two records with the same name. Yes, in the back.
Yes, you had mentioned about staging the Parcel Fabric in the file geodatabase before you send it to SDE.
Yep.
So if I have to append a whole bunch of parcels, a new section, would I just pull that out of the SDE server and put it back into a file geodatabase?
Yes, just from the enterprise to the file, massage it there, make sure it works. It's easy to massage it in a file before, and then move it back to the enterprise registers version, like we did here.
Yeah.
If the record name is unique, then why in the history table does it identify as a GUID?
Why do we, so of course, every entry in the database has a global ID, which is absolutely, in a very high probability unique. We mandate that the name of the record is also unique because we want it to reflect the recorder's number or land registry number, which are also unique.
But when you pull up that history table,
History table?
there was a created.
Oh, that's the polygon feature class table. The polygon, it has a created by record and a retired by record. Those are both GUIDs that are put in there.
That's a foreign key to the records table.
But if the record name is unique,
Why don't we use the record name in there?
unreadable.
Okay. Yeah.
So we got this, you can use attribute rules, which we didn't discuss here, to pull the actual record name on any feature class you want using that relationship class. So if you wanted to display the record name in the actual feature without having to navigate the relationship, you can apply an attribute rule on the feature class to do that. Okay? We just showed you behind the scenes how this works. Okay? You don't have to display the created by record and retired by record to the users, of course. Any other questions?
My organization uses ArcGIS Online as a portal. Do you have any idea how soon that's going to be supported?
Not soon. Yeah, if you go to the ArcGIS Enterprise Road Ahead session, there's a new project called Endeavor that uses microservices and Kubernetes to optimize. That's not around the corner. And once that is established, it might take a year or two till we can push it to ArcGIS Online. But I did use Amazon Online. You can use Azure or other cloud providers and put the entire enterprise environment on that. I put SQL Server and I loaded 10 million parcels to that environment so I can have it reflected in my phone and collect data and see the data getting updated live. Because once the data is published, web clients and mobile clients can see the data getting updated live. And it's all a matter of who you share it with. You don't need to actually have an ETL process to move it to another environment. It's always current and live. Yes?
So we are currently using Sidwell for next parcel generator. Is that included with Pro as well, or?
So Sidwell is a business partner that has some add-ins on ArcMap. It's a good question for them. They have a booth to know what their plans is and what things they want to. We've been working closely with them, so hopefully they will not develop anything that we are planning to develop later.
So my question is more that exists with the Parcel Fabric and Pro. So we actually want to migrate away from Sidwell and have everything done with it. I'm just being honest.
Yeah, I'm just, so Sidwell, we're working closely. They know where we're going. We know where they are. It's probably a better question to ask them.
Yeah.
So Esri is not going to have something that will generate the next parcel ID on the fly.
No, we already have this. It's called attribute rules, and you can configure it using Arcade, and it can always provide the next number in sequence.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody in the back there had the, yeah.
I may have missed this, but is LS Angus for 2.5?
If we are lucky and we can get it right in 2.5, we'll get it, but we are doing it, we want to do everything right. So we're probably going to have a holistic testers with people that do a lot of list square adjustment to make sure it meets the requirements before we release it. So if it's probably going to be more 2.6, a next UC thing, after we verify that everybody's happy with. And we are thinking of a list square engine that can handle millions of observations in the same time, so you can adjust entire country. This is where we're going.
We'll be downstairs in the spatial data management and also in the ArcGIS Pro booths if you have any further
Thank you.
questions.